give me 1 second to make sure that's up. We're set.
Thanks, Rob. Are we ready to start?
We are.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Faculty Senate meeting of the year. My name is David Turnbull. I currently serve as the chair of the Faculty Senate here at Washington State University. And we're just going to get things started right away. I want to introduce to you our president, President Kirk Schulz. But before I let him speak, I really want to offer him some appreciation and gratitude. So far, I have not heard of a single faculty member who lost his, her, or their job related to the budget reductions. And so, President Kirk, on behalf of the faculty here at Washington State University, thank you for your leadership. And I'm going to turn this over to you. And would you please introduce Provost Chilton when you have a chance? Thank you so much.
Great. Dave, thank you. And thank you to the Senate for having me on today. It's hard to believe that we're nearly through 5 weeks of the fall semester, and still feels a little odd to me walking through our campus and not seeing more people around. I really have just two things I want to visit with you all about, then introduce Elizabeth, and then just simply do Q&A. Dave requested, instead of a long, lengthy set of things, that we really focused around question and answers this afternoon. First, I want to thank all of you for the great job that you all are doing in a really challenging time. I've had the opportunity over the last several weeks to meet with several different student groups around campus, virtually, of course. And one of the things I always ask our students is, how's it going? How are their classes? And, there's always a few people that point to bumps in the road. The majority of students, the huge majority, say you all are doing a great job interacting with them. They feel that faculty are accessible, available, that you all care deeply about their learning in this really challenging environment. And just a lot of compliments to you all as faculty for the fantastic job that you're doing. So thank you. I also know that many of you are dealing with challenges of all of a sudden becoming K through 12 educators. If you have children at home, trying to manage that, daycare challenges, and then also elder parent challenges, on top of many of you are high achieving men and women that have typically worked really hard, perform very well, and it's just harder to do in this environment. And so I want to always continue to ask everybody to maybe manage your own expectations a bit. I've had to dial back some of what I expect to be able to do, and find that most evenings by 5 or 5:30 after a day of Zoom, I am just exhausted, and I'm used to normally doing evening events. And I've just had to dial back a bit of expectations on what I can do, and probably actually manage my own time a little bit more effectively than I've done in the past. The only major thing I want to mention today is around the roles and responsibilities report that was done by Chip Hunter and colleagues around WSU's system. My letter to campus, which is about 2/3 done, I was working on that earlier today, will really talk about some steps that we're already taking around the roles and responsibilities report, some of the specific recommendations that we're doing, and things like that. This will not be my only communication on that, but what we'll do is I'll do this one, and then we'll probably do them every several months, talking about progress, what we're doing, things like that. I also appreciate Dave and the Faculty Senate Leadership Group went through all the different organizations and groupings that were proposed in there, and proposed places that they felt it would be appropriate to have faculty representation from the Faculty Senate on those groups. And this is what we want to do moving ahead. So with that, really excited to have Elizabeth Chilton with us today as our Provost and Executive Vice President. Elizabeth has hit the ground running. She's been meeting with folks. And if you look at a positive silver lining from COVID, one of the things is that Elizabeth was able to participate in leadership meetings and other types of meetings on campus basically as soon as she accepted the job. And so while she may have been here 7 or 8 weeks, it's actually felt a lot longer because she was already interacting with us on a lot of strategic decision making back in May and June. And it's been fantastic to have her. Elizabeth also is the first person we've had as provost in some time that has not come out internally from WSU. And I think the positive there is she brings a set of experiences at UMass Amherst and at the SUNY Binghamton system that I think are going to be also extremely helpful to us as we look at how we manage WSU system operations going forward. Elizabeth also keeps an active research program going and has some students that she's still trying to finish up. So a scholar, a leader, really pleased to have Elizabeth Chilton here as our provost. So Elizabeth, the time is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really thrilled to be joining you today for our virtual meeting, although I wish that I was able to meet more of you in person, even physically distanced. But as the president mentioned, we've been having virtual town halls literally across the entire system and with all colleges. I think we're about halfway through those. And it's been terrific to speak with students, to speak with faculty, staff, I agree with President Schultz's comment that I've been really impressed at how you've all rolled up your sleeves and quickly adjusted to this landscape that none of us certainly were ever prepared for. And you've clearly delivered a first-class educational experience for our students this fall. I did move here in late June to Pullman, and my husband teaches in anthropology. My son is a sophomore in college out in New York State. And even though most of my interactions with all of you and with my colleagues have been virtual, I really do feel like I've gotten to know the place. And it's actually going on 10 weeks, Kirk. I know, hard to believe it's been that long, but it's almost 10 weeks that I've been in my position. I don't want to take up too much time. I did want to share and was asked to share just a few observations and priorities while I'm in the beginning of my position. And certainly, first and foremost, throughout my interview process, which I think most of you realize that I accepted this position sight unseen. I hadn't met Kirk in person, and I hadn't met anyone, and I'd never been to any of the WSU campuses before. So either my friends say that either I'm brave or insane, and maybe a little bit of both. But certainly what I heard a lot about during the interview process, during the onboarding, and throughout the past 10 weeks has really focused a lot on the system-wide partnerships and the systemness, as it's called. And honestly, that's something that really attracted me to this position. You know, my experiences, as Kirk said, in 2 other public university systems really gave me some insight into how systems can really facilitate what physical campuses and virtual campuses do and how they can sometimes get in the way. And so I'm really anxious to roll up my sleeves and work with you all on that. I also bring a really strong commitment on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I won't say too much about this except to say that we are searching for an associate vice provost for inclusive excellence. That was a vacancy. It's an internal search for a faculty member who wants to come into my shop and work with me half-time on issues of inclusive excellence. And finally, something that Kirk mentioned, I really feel it's important to promote and model a whole life philosophy for faculty and staff. COVID has just simply exacerbated what were already significant structural inequalities in higher education and in the nation. And so we really need to take time to be kind to one another and burdens that this has placed on all of us. And that's an important factor in supporting inclusive excellence, is just giving everyone and each other a little slack. So I've been very impressed in my short time here so far, and I look forward to the conversation today.
Great. At this point, we can open this up to questions. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask of either the president or the provost at this time? Don't all speak up at once. Please, we invited the president and the provost here especially so they could entertain any of the questions that you might have. I know some of you like to talk about football. Does anybody have a question about football?
So Matt Carroll here, School of the Environment.
Go ahead, Matt.
First, I want to welcome our new provost as a fellow, as a UMass graduate. I am thrilled to have her here, and I will tell you, Elizabeth, that your research interests and mine overlap just a little bit, and I'll talk to you about that sometime privately. But I'm just absolutely thrilled to have you on board. My question, though, is for the president. Kirk, I wonder if you could give us a little feeling for when the next shoe is likely to drop in terms of the impact of COVID on the university's finances. I understand that we're waiting for possible additional federal legislation to give more aid to the states, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. But with or without that bill, it seems to me that we've got some revenue streams that are greatly reduced. And we've gone through one budget cutting exercise, but when is the next one likely to be? When are we going to feel this some more?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So the states put out a revised revenue forecast, interestingly, yesterday, and I will send it to Dave so that he can post it so you all can see it. It's not a secret document. And in that, the state revenues have ticked up quite a bit over where they thought they would be, such that the state revenue, the big hole that we thought we'd have to fill in over the next 3 years is almost half of what they thought it was going to be just a few months ago. So that's been a positive set of budgetary news. I've also started my legislative visits, which normally just so everybody knows, September through December, a lot of times we do in-person visits before COVID in legislative districts where our elected officials are. Instead of asking them to come to us, we go to them. And we typically have longer discussions around the need for continued investment in public higher education and particular issues or projects for WSU. So my first one of those was supposed to be today, and we had some technological Zoom issues, believe it or not, and weren't able to get there. But I'll get a better feel for some of what we think is going to happen by the legislature in the next several months. So when's the next shoe going to drop? I think it's very unlikely, looking in my crystal ball, that there's going to be a special session of the legislature before January. So if that does not occur, we probably won't know much more until February or March about where things are going to be. Part of my job and part of the job of our government relations team is to go convince the legislature that, hey, we've taken a cut, we've done our part, and you're going to basically hurt the long-term prospects of regrowing our economy by cutting higher education further. So we're going to be pretty aggressive in our messaging, and let's keep our fingers crossed. So bottom line, I don't expect to have any new solid budgetary information for the campus community until early 21. And it's not that we're holding anything back. There's just nothing new to report right now. So that's positive news, I think, for us. And we're going to continue to keep the campus involved and engaged in that. The other thing you didn't ask about that I'm just going to go ahead and insert here, one of the other attributes Elizabeth brought is in her time at UMass as a senior leader there, she was very involved in a redo of the way internal budgeting was done in collaboration with the faculty. And I think that's one of the things that she is going to co-lead with Stacy Pearson, how we do our budgeting internally. That comes up again and again. Essentially, our budgeting process is a band-aided set of things over 20 years as opposed to a logical process about where things go, how we distribute our dollars. And that's going to be another thing that is going to be going on simultaneously with all this. So that's not a great satisfactory answer, but that's the best I got right now. And as always, we'll keep campus community informed as much as we can with the most accurate data that we have at the time.
So
If I could just follow up very quickly, how about some of our own revenue streams. In other words, we have revenue streams coming in. Obviously, we have an athletic deficit that's huge, but we also have revenue streams from housing, food services, and ultimately, it's all one big budget, right? So have we already absorbed the reductions that are relative to those non-legislative revenue streams?
Yes. We've already absorbed many of those and put those cuts in place. A lot of those were open positions that aren't filled and things like that. So yes, we have. And you brought up athletics, and we don't know what some of the athletics things are going to look like. If there's the ability to resume some competitions and have that on TV in a safe environment, that's going to change that picture for the better. So all this is kind of continually evolving, and we should have a better sense of where we are with tuition revenue for the fall term in the next couple weeks. And you say, well, we know what our student numbers are, what takes some time. Well, it depends how many waivers we gave out, what our net tuition was versus what we budgeted, and things like that. So bottom line, we're happy to come to one of the future Senate meetings and kind of go through exactly where all that is. But Matthew, some of that is still in evolutionary stages right now. So again, we'll keep people informed as soon as we know it.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick related question is, when might the Pac-12 make a decision? Do you know anything about that?
What kind of decision are you talking about? No, I'm just
whether or not they're going to play games. And I think more to the point, President Schultz, is how much of the expected revenue for a normal season we might see that the football team might get. Are they going to? When might we hear how many games they're playing and what the shortfall is?
Right. In terms of whether or not we're going to be playing football, what a schedule could look like and things like that, I was looking at my clock. There will be an announcement forthcoming from the Pac-12 conference in 12 minutes. And I can say a few hypotheticals that one, if we play football this fall, it would not start before November 7th. It would be a 6-game season, 3 home games, 3 away games, 0 fans. There's no public health thing that says it's good to get a whole group of people together in a big space like that. So those are the types of things that I was just prior to this in a Pac-12 board meeting where this was a topic of discussion. So now that some decisions have been made, and as they're announced later today and so forth, we'll be able to do a much better job of that financial forecasting. So,
but really the revenues from the fans and from packing the stadium is much less than the media rights. So
correct.
If we're playing games and having TV, that'll be really helpful.
That'll be huge. Yes, it will.
Okay. Yeah, much more than the fan base. Okay, thank you.
There are a couple other questions that have been posted, and I'll let Elizabeth say a few things about next semester because there's 2 questions related to that. There was a question, is there a plan for increased access for faculty and staff to COVID testing? The answer is yes. We're working on negotiation of those contracts and how that's all going to work. We expect to have that testing available sometime next week for people to be able to do that in a really convenient manner. So we didn't want to make an announcement about a date and then slide it by 3 days because we didn't have our act together. So please expect to see something formal about that next week as well around the COVID-19 testing for faculty and staff. Elizabeth, do you want to take a couple of questions and chat about spring?
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, I don't want to preempt. I don't know how your agenda you were intending to address the issue of the academic calendar, which is something that I understand that you all will need to vote on at your next meeting in October. Do you want me to raise that as in part an answer to the question here, or do you want to?
I think that any information you could provide would only help.
Okay.
Regarding your proposed changes to the spring semester for the Pullman campus, yes.
Okay, great. At this moment, I am speaking to you as the unofficial Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs for the Pullman campus. And I want to make that very clear that I'm not speaking on behalf of the other physical or the global campus. I've been talking since I started my position with deans, with the cabinet, President's cabinet, with members of the Faculty Senate leadership. I also serve on the campus locations and operations group, as well as many more informal conversations with faculty, staff, and students. A lot of that has focused on spring 2021. I was here and in my position when we made the decision to pivot to primarily remote instruction for the fall. And so, of course, once we made that decision, we were immediately, trying to plan for the spring. And, as you all know, as well as I do, one thing that we are lacking these days is certainty. And there are a lot of things that it's hard to imagine January and February right now because so much can change so quickly. But we need to make a decision for Pullman about finalizing the spring course schedule because students typically would expect by early October to be able to see a course schedule so that they could make their decisions about, meet with their advisors and make decisions about the spring semester. Now it's even more important that they know whether or not the course would be remote or in person so they can make decisions about housing and such. And so based on all of that, really it was just this week that I homed in on a decision about what to ask course schedulers to do at this point. And so first of all, we will essentially continue the exception process that we began this fall. All or certainly most lecture classes will continue to be offered remotely. We will expand the exception process to include more of our experiential, lab-based, studio-based, and hands-on classes. The exception process will still be led by Vice Provost Craig Parks. He has a small committee, as it was this semester. We will continue to prioritize exceptions for in-person instruction on the basis of pedagogy and educational outcomes as opposed to size per se. And then there will still need to be plans for social distancing, wearing of masks, cleaning protocols, and such. One of the constraints that we put on exceptions for in-person instruction was that instructors would still need to be able to make accommodations for students who become sick during the semester or need to quarantine for a short period. This is because we don't want students with fevers or whose roommates have COVID to come to class because they fear they will be penalized if they do not. And so we ask each instructor to say how they will accommodate students if they need to be absent for 2 weeks or so. Obviously, if a student got very sick and had to miss the rest of the semester, we would do what we would normally do under those circumstances. We will provide resources through academic outreach and innovation to make sure that faculty who do teach in person understand how they might make that pivot. It can be as simple as just hitting record on Zoom, but there may be other innovations that someone would want to take on. And then finally, this is my very strong opinion that no faculty member or instructor should be required or otherwise coerced into teaching in person if they are not comfortable doing so. I don't think we want to get into the business of trying to verify whether someone's in a high-risk group, because if you're a human being, you are in a high-risk group by definition. And also it may be that you live with people who are in high-risk groups. And so I don't think we want to get into the business of policing that. So the provost office will monitor this carefully just to make sure everyone has the information they need to make these kinds of informed decisions. We did commit to students that we would release the spring schedule by mid-October. So this really only gives us a couple of weeks, and we are sending information out probably as I speak to course schedulers to work with you all. We'll be sending out the reminder about the exception process. And I've communicated this also with the other 4 physical campuses and the global campus. They will need to make their own decisions, but obviously they need to know what we're doing. There is one final piece of this, and then I'll open it up to questions. I know I'm rambling on here, but I spoke to Dave Turnbull this morning, and then I also sent a memo because I understand that the Faculty Senate appropriately needs to be the body to deliberate on changes to the academic calendar. And I understood that it would need to be introduced today in order for it to be voted on at your October meeting in time for us to include it in our release of the spring calendar or spring schedule. So let me just pull up the memo that I sent. What I am proposing, and again, this is for the Pullman campus. However, I'm told that it would create all sorts of confusion if it ended up that the other campuses were on a different academic calendar. So while I do not have the authority at this moment to propose this for the entire system, I will be, between now and when you would need to vote on it, working with the chancellors and the vice chancellors for academic affairs to make sure that we're all on the same page before I ask you to actually take a vote. But essentially, I'm proposing a change to the academic calendar for spring 2021. Basically, we're requesting that we start the spring semester 2 weeks later than normal, and that we eliminate spring break. I am told by Mary Wack that we still would have enough weeks to satisfy accreditation, because apparently we have 1 extra week more than we need, and Dave tells me that that's odd, and we'll certainly look into that. But Mary Wack assures me that if we start 2 weeks later and just eliminate spring break, maybe just have a few, would have Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, and maybe 1 day in March, that would then get us through to the end of the semester. The reasons for this request, first of all, it would allow for a staggered move-in and testing and quarantine protocol. I'm on the testing, attestation, and contact tracing group. We're meeting this afternoon to continue to develop our spring protocol. But that would just give us a couple extra weeks for quarantine time and staggered move-in. It also will give us an opportunity to potentially adjust to changing federal decisions about allowing remote instruction. Right now, the U.S. Department of Education has not authorized us to offer our education primarily remotely past this calendar year. And so we're not expecting to have any change to that until after the election. And that would give us a couple of weeks to pivot in one way or another should we need to. And then finally, the rationale for eliminating spring break, I think, is something that a number of our peers share, just minimizing further exposure for our students during that week and bringing it back to campus. So that is both the proposal and my rationale. Happy to open that up for questions.
Any questions for the provost? Any other questions for the president?
There were,
Are there some in the chat?
yes.
President Kirk, Provost Chilton, can I ask you to look at the chat and address any of the questions you might see in there?
You know, there was one question from Vilma Navarro Daniels about converting face-to-face courses into the global campus. If Vilma doesn't mind, could you say a little bit more about what you would see the advantages of doing that versus remote teaching?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity for clarification. When we teach remotely and we teach through or over Zoom, we are here seated in front of our computers. And I know because some of my colleagues who teach 4 courses spend a lot of time teaching over Zoom. And it's very, very exhausting. Instead, teaching through Global Campus, you actually do not interact with the students. You can have some real-time activities if you want, maybe once every 2 weeks or so, but the remote teaching is something very demanding. It's not the same that teaching in person, it's not teaching online, it's something in between. And this kind of liminal space is very demanding. And I have seen that in some of my colleagues.
Yes, I appreciate the clarification. I now understand you perfectly. Married to someone who's teaching in this room while my college-age student was taking classes in that room, and I saw the sandwich that both of them were experiencing. So my understanding, and I don't know if Craig Parks happens to be on the call today, but my understanding is that based on our accreditation for all of the campuses other than the global campus, that we have to verify that there is some kind of synchronous interaction. It doesn't have to be 100%, but there has to be some substantial synchronous interaction for accreditation purposes for those degree programs that are offered at our physical campuses. If one wanted to work with AOI, our academic outreach and innovation, I know that they are working with faculty to really parse out what kinds of things could you make be asynchronous so that you don't have to be staring at the screen yourself, what parts really could be synchronous, how much, they don't actually give you a percentage. One of the reasons why we like some of it, at least, to be synchronous is that it keeps students motivated. Otherwise, if there's no schedule whatsoever, we find that there's a little bit of a motivation slippage. So I'm sure that AOI would be happy to work with you so that we can meet the standard of accreditation, but at the same time, take into account the kind of weariness that you're talking about, which I completely understand. Let's see what else we got here.
I think we got most of them.
Yeah.
Could you explain the justification for the changing administrative cost recovery, FNA cost recovery that you've proposed?
So that is an FNA cost recovery that has been proposed by Chris Keene, VP Research, and my understanding is just to get some more of the FNA out to the colleges. But to be honest with you, I'm new to that proposal as well. It certainly is not my individual proposal, but I am on the FNA committee. I've been talking with the committee about their rationale. I've been talking with the deans about it. The deans asked me a couple of questions that they asked me to clarify with Chris Keene. And then I know that you're all reviewing it. I don't know if Kirk or anyone else has any further background on why this is coming now.
I
Yeah,
don't.
maybe.
I know it's out there, but Michael, I appreciate your suggestion and comment. I'm more than happy to make sure that we wait until after we hear a formal response from the Faculty Senate prior to action or doing anything or things like that. So I do want to make sure anytime you change FNA cost recovery, somebody's upset. And I'm not saying that means you just jam stuff through. So we need to hear from our research faculty that do a lot of sponsored work on the merits or problems with the proposal as it is. So I do want to make sure that we hear those critiques and criticisms and take them into account if possible. So
It does look like Chris Keene is coming into the October meeting, so that might be a good opportunity.
and we can wait to make sure that we don't approve it until after Chris talks to the faculty senate, if that would be acceptable. So Dave, I'll let you and your colleagues work out whatever is best there, but I think we can make sure that let's not jam something through that just because we can, that is going to cause some challenges and issues that because we didn't get enough input. So
Let me just point out that we did that sort of FNA return 40 years ago, and it essentially led to some serious interactions between the faculty and the state legislature. So be aware that there are latent antibodies circulating out there.
thank you. At least it's language I have some sense of. So thank you.
Any other questions for the president or the provost this afternoon? Well, hearing none, I really want to express my deep appreciation to both President Kirk and Provost Chilton for coming in today. Again, I'm really happy of the job that President Kirk has done captaining this ship through the pandemic, and I am just delighted, as are my colleagues on the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, with the hiring of our new provost, Elizabeth Chilton. Thank you both so much. And unless there are any other questions, we'll move on with the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
We do. Wonderful. The meeting will come to order, and we will start today with the approval of the minutes from April 9th, 2020. Are there any corrections to the minutes from April 9th? If there are no corrections, the minutes stand approved. We'll move on to our announcements now. You'll notice that if you look at the agenda, we have a number of information items. Faculty Senate officers met with the president and the provost on both August 25th and September 15th. You'll notice that we have a minor change bulletin, number 1. You can check that out in Exhibit B. Over the summer, the steering committee passed a number of items. A notice of intent for a new department in viticulture and enology. A notice of intent for a degree name change, Master in Applied Economics. A proposal to discontinue Masters in Public Affairs. Edits to graduate school policies and procedures. Submitting final thesis or dissertation to graduate school. The notice of intent from the Elson Floyd College of Medicine, a new unit, behavioral health. A 2-year moratorium, the Department of Communication and Society. A notice of dissolution of the Memo of Understanding for the Bi-State School of Food Science. Faculty manual amendment to reflect the updated federal Title IX policy. And finally, a notice of degree proposal to suspend the BA in Asia Studies. Now we'll move on to reports, the remarks from the chair. You should know that the chair gave a report to the Board of Regents last Friday. It was written wonderfully by the past chair, Greg Crouch, and delivered by myself, the current chair. So I'd like to give you just a few of the highlights from that report. During the summer, Faculty Senate leadership collaborated with the Office of the Provost as well as the Office of Civil Rights Compliance and Investigation to update the faculty manual to follow those new federal Title IX guidances. We also collaborated with Information Technology Services and Academic Outreach and Innovation to continue the new Canvas Learning Management System pilot program. We worked with the Office of Research to evaluate draft revisions to Executive Policy Number 2, which is what we were discussing earlier. This concerns how F&A fees are distributed within and between campuses. In collaboration with ITS, AOI, and other system stakeholders, we prepared a report outlining technology needs required for a robust and high-quality remote educational experience for both faculty and students. And finally, we partnered with ITS to create, distribute, and analyze a new type of survey instrument used to gather student feedback for spring 2020. Finally, on June 16th, President Schultz and Provost Chilton provided the Senate with the final report from the Roles and Responsibilities Task Force. And over the last few months, the Senate has been collecting feedback, and we will present a summary to the President later this semester. I'd like to direct your attention down to the discussion items. I'd like you to take a look at the new tracking system that we've initiated starting this fall. This comes to us from our Executive Secretary, Matt Huddleston. I think it is really going to help us keep track of things as we move through the semester. All right, moving on with the meeting. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as written. And as you can see, there are no action items. So we'll move through the discussion items this afternoon. Discussion item number 1 is a recommendation from the steering committee to approve the faculty senate committees. Do I hear any discussion concerning this item? I can't see hands, so please speak up if you have any discussion concerning this item. None? Okay.
Nothing online.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to discussion item number 2, the recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 15, credit by examinations. And if you have any questions, Debbie Handy is here. Any discussion of this item? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to discussion item number 3, the recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the UCOR Bulletin number 1. Again, Debbie Handy is here. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Discussion item number 4, the request from the Provost's office regarding the spring semester schedule. Any discussion?
Hi, this is Robin in the Tri-Cities. I just wanted to clarify, the document on the table is Pullman only. If the expectation is that we'll vote on it in 2 weeks as a system senate for only Pullman, but in the meantime, Provost Chilton is going to talk to the other campuses, and somehow this will become a system-wide decision, even though the vote is only on the Pullman campus.
Robin, I think you bring up a good point, and what I will do as the chair of the Senate is I will go back to Elizabeth Chilton for clarification on that, so that we are all in the know in that regard before we actually take a vote on this, okay?
Okay, my second comment on this is I have obviously a very huge concern for our students on campus, but at my campus, we don't have any students living on campus. So to eliminate the spring break for students across the system who don't have this particular need seems a little bit heavy-handed for the rest of the system, but thank you.
Yeah, I'll make note of that, and I will express that concern to the provost as well.
If I can.
Any other discussion? Yes, speak up,
Alex
please. Alex
Dimitrov. Just to follow up on what Robin says, I agree that we don't have the same concern as Pullman for residential students, but that was the point of my question. When we have shared classes, those different academic calendars can wreak havoc in those shared classes.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to be conscious about that.
Alex, that is a very good point, the shared classes.
Also, it's
Any other discussion?
Matt Carroll, I happen to teach one of those shared classes, so that would be a concern. Also, I need to check with my colleagues in School of the Environment, but I expect other places as well. Sometimes spring break figures heavily into people's research agendas in terms of students going out and doing field work. So there's a lot of moving pieces here to be carefully thought about.
also this
Say
is,
that again, Matt. Research agendas and student. How did you phrase that?
Well, students, graduate students, often field-oriented graduate students, plan on spring break as a time to collect some data.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of moving pieces that I think we need to really think about.
Understood.
also really quickly, this is Susan Horde. In the chat, President Schultz said all of our campuses will be on the same calendar, which to me says this is not a Pullman only vote. It's for everybody. So I think this needs to be pushed back a while until we get some more information.
Yeah, but
Yeah, your
as,
point is well taken.
as I pointed out, the document is for Pullman only. I responded to him almost immediately. So there was, if you listen to Provost Chilton, she was talking of that as a Pullman only thing. The president was not quite on the same page.
This is Brad, and I guess I'm wondering from her procedures, what I interpreted the provost was trying to say is she knows she had to submit it today to get it to vote to make all the other processes. And I'm assuming it's going to be working with the other campuses with the hope that we could amend the memo to reflect a system-wide decision when we go to vote on it. But so it's at least in the queue for the process.
Brad, I think that is a pretty darn accurate assessment of the situation.
I agree.
Any other comments? Yeah, Robin?
No, I was just saying I agree with Brad on that, which seemed disingenuous, but that's it.
Hi, this is Julie in the pharmacy program in Spokane. Just want to echo what Robin and other senators have been stating. I was a little bit late to this because of our executive committee meeting for our program where we were discussing this exact thing of how do we do spring if we decide as a Spokane campus or program to be fully online where we have lab skill based things, as I know other programs are looking at this as well. And it really was going to be a problem if we didn't have spring break because of required rotations for students that happened before, after, and over some of the breaks within the semester that we're kind of held with by our accrediting body to make sure that they're on track. So if this is truly going to be Pullman only, then I would defer to people who are teaching and more based in Pullman. But if the thought is that then it will just be rubber stamped for everywhere else to have a consistent calendar, I think it's going to cause a lot of issues.
Your point is well taken. Any other discussion?
It's Alan Felsot. Is the ask if the provost is open to alternative ideas. I see one idea in the memo could be alternative ideas. For example, delay finals week and still have your spring break. But you know, maybe other ideas could lead to a better outcome.
Yeah, I'm taking notes. Thank you, Alan. Any other comments? All right, thank you. Let's move on to constituents' concerns. The first constituent concern today comes from Pam Toma, and a memo / letter from the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies regarding increased demand on faculty during COVID-19 remote work. Pam, can I hand this over to you now?
Sure, thank you. So last summer, a few of us affiliate faculty in the program in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies were inspired by colleagues across the country in programs and departments who were engaging their administrators in discussions about conditions within universities during the pandemic. And many of these folks were writing into the program administrators and directors listserv that the National Women's Studies Association runs, and shared letters and concerns and actions. So several of us affiliate faculty decided to go ahead and write our own. We were inspired by these other programs doing this, and we did, and we circulated it. We wanted to get it in before fall. We wanted to send this to administrators before fall. So we circulated it to just a few listservs that we knew of, including the WGSS listserv, but also the AFW listserv and the Commission for the Status of Women, the President's Commission for the Status of Women listserv. And then through word of mouth, some people heard about it. So it ended up that there were over 120 signatures on this letter that we sent August 1st. And I'm just going to, if it's okay, share my screen. I can't do that. Do you have that, that people can just take a look at that letter?
You can share your screen now.
Okay. Let's see. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the letter, and it isn't posted in the blog, but I just wanted everyone to see that it contains a lot of information to research and some statistics and information on what's happening in universities and colleges across the United States with respect to labor and workloads, and particularly what's called invisible academic labor, the kind of service labor that happens even certainly outside of COVID or the pandemic situation, but how that's been exacerbated. So I invite you all to take a look at that letter that's in the blog if you haven't already. And I'm also, can you see this screen?
Yes.
The Women's and Gender Studies. This is an example of another campus, the University of Wisconsin. They have actually, they have a system, right? And they have created a caregiving task force, and they've made a series of recommendations, as we have in our letter to the administration, about how to address the uptick in the burden of service labor that's happening. And this is on top of course, what Vilma was describing for so many instructors who are teaching 3-3, 4-4. The service responsibilities are just nearly impossible at this point. But even for those who are teaching 2-2, in combination with what's going on in home and without child care or school in term, there's serious problems. At any rate, we met with Provost Chilton and Vice Provost Laura Greiner Hill, and they are taking the lead on this, and they have met with various leaders on campus, including the Faculty Senate leadership, to talk about what everyone can do to alleviate service burdens to bracket them or delay them while we're dealing with this crisis situation. So we don't make ourselves sick doing far more than we should, which is certainly what we typically do. But in this situation, it's just out of control. So at any rate, I just wanted to let you know, we do know there are other initiatives. I see some things in the chat. There are other initiatives and discussions happening, and we didn't submit this as the only one. We welcome a diverse conversation, a lively, vibrant conversation in all areas of the campus, and hope we can come up with ideas to make this a more manageable workload for everybody at WSU and on all the campuses. So please take a look at the letter, and if you have ideas, share them with your leaders on campus. That's more than I wanted to say, but I wanted to give you the background and the impetus behind this. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, thank you. I want you to know that we had a very sincere discussion of this memo/letter with the president and the provost. I want to thank you and the other two authors for the work that you did. This is an extensive memo, and the first step I'd like to take as chair of the Faculty Senate is to encourage all the chairs of the respective committees to read through this, take it to heart, and really do your best to try to minimize the workloads on your respective committees. We can talk about this more in steering committee next week. But I think the first step is to read this memo and to really take it to heart. So thank you, Pam, much appreciated. You should also know that a copy of the memo is on the Faculty Senate blog, and we have a number of items. How many do we have up there now? 4 or 5?
Yeah.
4?
I put the state revenue forecast there too.
Okay, the state revenue forecast is on the blog now, and we encourage all of you to participate. Provide us with your input so we can send that to the administration. And I think that before we go on to EP22, I think we really like to bring Heiko Jansen on. Heiko, are you on? And if you wouldn't mind presenting the request from James Kruger regarding intercollegiate football.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. So I've been asked to convey this request, which is a proposal for a Senate resolution from James Kruger, who is Regents Professor in Spokane. He's also a member of my department, IPN, in the College of Veterinary Medicine. So again, this is also on the blog, but I'll read the various items proposed here. Whereas chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, is a common condition caused by playing football and is associated with lifelong brain damage and cognitive disabilities. Whereas as an institution of higher education, our highest goal is to enhance the cognitive abilities of our students. Whereas joint injury is caused by playing football and often creates a lifelong disability. Whereas football is a form of entertainment, not an academic pursuit, and its entertainment value is not part of the WSU mission. Whereas the WSU athletic program is greatly in debt, approaching $100 million, and this debt continues to increase. Whereas in 2021, there will be no WSU football season due to SARS-CoV-2 and the Pac-12 cancellation of intercollegiate games. Whereas the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic has substantially harmed WSU financial prospects, and this will likely continue into 2022. Whereas athletic donations barely cover the cost of football scholarships. Whereas diversion of funds to the athletic program diminishes the WSU academic program and thereby falls under the purview of the WSU Faculty Senate, we hereby submit that WSU 1, put all employees associated with the intercollegiate football program on indefinite furlough. 2, start the process of removing WSU intercollegiate football from the WSU athletic program. 3, continue to pay scholarships to the football players, promised such until they graduate, but not initiate any new football scholarships. And 4, request the WSU Faculty Senate develop position statements related to the incompatibilities of football with any institution of higher education. It is anticipated that the financial savings to WSU will be substantial and thereby enhance our academic programs. It is anticipated that WSU will be recognized as a national leader in higher education by eliminating harm done to our students for the sake of entertainment. James Kruger, PhD, MDHC Regents Professor. Thank you.
Thank you, Heiko. Do you have anything else you want to say regarding James Kruger, his letter?
I encourage anyone who has comments or wishes to vote on this to go to the Senate blog website and contribute those comments. I think it's important that everyone has their say.
I would agree, Heiko. Again, thank you for reading that. Everybody should know that I had a conversation with James just a couple of days ago. He's out in Montana. He feels very strongly about this, and in our conversation with him, my conversation with him, I asked him how we could proceed with this resolution, and he and I agreed that the best thing to do would be to post it on the Faculty Senate website blog, allow people to comment on it there, and to get behind it and support it in any way, shape, or form they feel. And we have, like I said earlier, a number of issues on that blog. And I think that's something that Greg Crouch started just within the last year. Is that right? Yeah, it's been a wonderful addition a couple of years ago. And there's one other issue I think that we need to bring up in constituents' concerns today as well, and it has to do with Executive Policy Number 2. Doug Call, would you mind speaking to that?
Sure. So Executive Policy Number 2 is how WSU defines the distribution of indirects or F&A back to the different units on campus. This new policy was apparently 2 years in the workings. It addresses how to deal with F&A with the different campuses, but it also has, and also adds some clarity or transparency into how F&A funds are invested. The one significant controversial proposal here is to eliminate the current distribution below at the college level. Currently, it's 15% of the returns go to the department where the faculty resides, their appointment resides, or where they submitted their grant, and 8% to the dean. Under the new policy, the whole 23% routes back to the dean, which is probably on a controversial side of things. So if you have a feeling about this or a comment, pro or con, the best thing to do is to respond through that blog if you don't mind it being in the public sphere. If not, you can email me directly and I'll compile these as well, along with the public comments, to put together a response for the Office of Research. I will say that the Office of Research has been very open with speaking with us about this. They've made a number of changes up to this point as well. And I think they'll be responsive if we have a strong message for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Any other constituents' concerns today?
Dave, I'd like Matt Carroll here, SOE. I'd like to just, first of all, express my great satisfaction that Greg is representing us these days on the Board of Regents. And to encourage Greg, I realize some of the things the Board of Regents considers are not of particular interest to this body, but some are. And I would really encourage Greg to keep us informed on important matters, particularly when they consider budgets.
Matt, that point is well taken. I'll let Greg speak if he likes, but what I might tell you is that he's just kind of getting his feet wet with this here. He's trying to figure out his place on the Board of Regents. He just recently found out that he's also invited to the executive sessions of the Board of Regents, but he definitely wants to find a means and a way to report back to the Faculty Senate. And I think knowing him personally and how conscientious he is, I think he's trying to think through this to find the best way to report back to the Faculty Senate. Greg, would you like to talk to this at all?
Wheel in. Yes, they just amended the
the Board of Regents bylaws to more formalize the faculty representative, including, as Dave said, attendance at executive session. Some of the stuff that they discuss in that's confidential and it can't be shared outside of the executive session. But one of the most beneficial things with the Board of Regents now is that the stuff's on YouTube. And I've been posting the links to it on the Faculty Senate website and collecting information on that. But we are going to work out a report back, probably on the Senate blog, when they deal with issues like budget. For example, the athletic budget was discussed a lot, and its approval was delayed until the November. Voting on it was delayed until the November meeting. So I appreciate the comments, and I will do my best to make sure that faculty are represented as best I can, and we report back.
Any other constituents' concerns? Hearing none, I want to thank everybody for their attendance today. I feel like we have just a terrific team here in terms of the Faculty Senate leadership, the executive committee. I worked with the steering committee last week, and I can tell you we have some really terrific people working the Senate this year, and there couldn't be a better time for it as we proceed through this pandemic. Thank all of you for your willingness to run for Senate seats and your willingness to attend these meetings and to participate. The shared governance here at Washington State University is one of the best in the country. I know when I talk to faculty leaders at the other Pac-12 schools, they're astonished as to how good we have it here at Washington State University. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. The meeting, unless anybody objects, the meeting is adjourned.